Those were my husband's last words to me. His voice was weak, his hands still warm in mine. And I just sat there paralyzed. My name is Diana Caldwell and I was married to Peter for 41 years. We had the house, the kids, the Sunday routines, the anniversary cruises. From the outside it looked like we won the game of marriage. But I need to tell you something nobody ever told me. A long marriage isn't always a deep one. And being committed doesn't mean you were ever truly connected. Peter passed away 3 weeks ago. Pancreatic cancer. It came fast. Too fast. 4 months from diagnosis to funeral. But those 4 months, they cracked something open in me. Because as his body faded, so did the performance. And for the first time in decades, Peter and I actually talked. Not about errands or kids or bills. But about the things we never said. And what came out? It wasn't what I expected. I thought he'd tell me I was his rock. That I was the love of his life. Instead he told me the truth. That I had made him feel small. That I always had to win. That I listened only to reply, not to understand. That I gave him presence, but rarely gave him access. And the worst part? As he said it, I realized he was right. So this isn't a story about grief. It's a confession. Of the 5 mistakes I made, over and over, across 4 decades. And how his final breath forced me to finally take a look in the mirror. The first mistake I made? I believed being strong meant being closed. I grew up watching women swallow their emotions like pills. My mother wore silence like perfume. My grandmother used sarcasm as armor. And I turned independence into isolation. I didn't cry in front of Peter. Not when I lost my job. Not when my father died. Not even when our youngest moved across the country and stopped calling. Instead, I poured my pain into laundry, balanced checkbooks, and lists on the fridge. I was always fine. Always functioning. Always in control. And Peter? He mistook that control for confidence. He'd say, "You're the strongest person I know." And I'd smile like it was a compliment. But what I didn't realize was that every time I locked the door to my inner world, I kept him out too. He told me toward the end, "You never needed me." Not really. And that hit harder than I expected. Because the truth is, I did need him. I just didn't know how to show it. I thought love meant never being a burden. Never breaking down. Never saying, "I'm scared. I'm lost. I don't know how to do this." But love isn't built on perfection. It's built on access. Peter had a wife who managed everything. But he never got the messy, scared, tender version of me. The one who needed to be held at 3 a.m. The one who wanted to be known, not just admired. I gave him strength. But I withheld softness. And now I wonder, how many nights he lay awake next to me wishing I'd just fall apart, so he could be the one to hold the pieces. The second mistake? I turned every disagreement into a debate. Peter and I rarely fought, not loudly anyway. But we argued all the time. Quietly. Politely. Ruthlessly. He'd say, "I don't think we should lend your brother money again." I'd say, "So now we don't help family?" He'd suggest a different route on a road trip. I'd double-check the GPS just to prove I was right. It wasn't about the subject. It was about winning. I treated marriage like a chess match. If he forgot to take out the trash, I'd bring up the time I covered for him at his sister's party. If I messed up, I'd deflect. Redirect. Peter once joked, "You should have been a lawyer." I wore that like a badge. But here's what I couldn't see then. Every time I won a point, I lost a piece of us. Over the years, the air between us filled with invisible tension. Not explosive, just thick. Like we were always bracing. He stopped sharing things with me, small things at first. A story from work. A frustration about his brother. A memory from childhood. I asked him once why he didn't open up anymore. He looked at me and said gently, "Because I never get to just feel something. It always turns into a correction. That cut deeper than any shouting match ever could." I didn't need to be cruel to cause harm. I just needed to be right a little too often. And now that he's gone, I'd give anything to go back. Not to take back the arguments, but to let them go. To say, "You're right." Or better yet, "It doesn't matter who's right. I'm still here. I still love you." The third mistake? I mistook routine for intimacy. For years, Peter and I had a rhythm. Wake up. Coffee. Newspapers and silence. He'd kiss my cheek before leaving for work. I'd make dinner at 6. We'd watch something at 8. Lights out by 10. It was easy. Predictable. Comfortable. And I thought comfort meant connection. I didn't notice how long it had been since we'd asked each other real questions. Not, "How was your day?" But, "What are you afraid of lately? What dream are you still holding on to?" We stopped being curious. I remember once, maybe a decade ago, Peter asked if I wanted to take a road trip across the coast. No plan, just us and a map. I laughed. Told him we were too old for spontaneity. He never asked again. Instead we took cruises, scheduled tours, group dinners with name tags. And I told myself that was romance. But routine isn't romance. It's maintenance. And maintenance isn't intimacy. Toward the end, Peter told me, sometimes I felt like a character in your script. Like we were acting out the idea of a good marriage but not really living it. I wanted to argue. We never cheated. We never yelled. We stayed. But now I see what he meant. We didn't risk. We didn't stretch. We didn't choose each other daily, we just defaulted. And love doesn't thrive in default mode. Love asks for intention. For surprise. For the kind of presence that says, even after 40 years I still want to know who you are becoming. But I didn't ask. Because I thought I already knew him. And the truth is, you can live beside someone for decades and still miss who they really are. I withheld softness in the moments it was needed most. Peter wasn't an emotional man. He didn't cry at funerals. Didn't gush during holidays. His way of loving was quiet. Fixing things before I asked, rubbing my shoulders when I cooked, filling my gas tank without saying a word. But sometimes he did reach out. Like the night his mother died. He came into our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed and said softly, "She's gone." I remember looking up from my book, stunned for a second. Then I said, "I'm so sorry," and rubbed his back once. He nodded. Got up. Went to shower. I never saw him cry. And I never invited him to. Why didn't I pull him close that night? Why didn't I hold him while he grieved like I would a child? Why didn't I let him be unguarded, and meet him there with no fear, no rush, no judgment? I'll tell you why. Because I'd learned to fear vulnerability, not just in myself but in others. I didn't know how to sit in someone else's rawness without trying to patch it up or move past it. So I gave him space, respect, privacy, but not presence. And he remembered that. On his final night, when he was fading in and out, I climbed into bed beside him at the hospice. Laid my head on his chest. He stirred, barely able to speak, and whispered, "I'm glad you're here now." I closed my eyes and held his hand. But inside I wanted to scream. Because I had missed so many nows. So many chances to just be with him instead of always managing him. Marriage isn't just shared responsibility. It's shared tenderness. And I had offered far too little of that. The fifth mistake? I waited too long to speak the truth. There were so many things I thought I'd say, one day. One day, I'd tell him I still remembered the exact shirt he wore the night he proposed. One day, I'd admit that sometimes I felt jealous of his calm, because I didn't know how to find my own. One day, I'd thank him for the time he held our son's head in his lap when he broke his arm and whispered, "You're brave even when it hurts." But I waited. And waited. Because I thought love could be understood without being spoken. But love unspoken becomes assumed. And assumptions become silence. And silence becomes regret. In his final days, Peter struggled to breathe, but he kept trying to talk. His words were soft, tangled. But I leaned in. That's when he said it. "You always loved being right more than being close." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't bitter. It was just honest. He wasn't talking about one fight. He was talking about all the moments I chose distance over vulnerability, control over connection, silence over softness. And in that moment, something inside me cracked open. I took his hand, placed it on my chest, and finally said everything I'd never found the courage to say. "I loved you. Even when I was afraid to show it. I was proud of you. Even when I was too stubborn to admit it. And if I could go back, I would choose closeness over being right. Every single time." His eyes watered. And he nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It was understanding. And sometimes that's all we really need before the end. The house feels different now. Not because he's gone, but because I'm finally noticing all the ways I kept him out of it. There's a small wooden box in the hallway closet. I found it while cleaning. Inside were letters. All addressed to me. None of them ever given. The oldest was from 1991. "You were right today. I should have asked how you felt about moving instead of deciding for both of us. I didn't know how to say it then, but I see you, even when I disagree." There were a dozen more. Some long, some only a few lines. "Thank you for making my birthday feel like I mattered. I wish we talked more. I miss the way we used to laugh for no reason. You looked beautiful tonight. I didn't say it. I should have." Each letter was a window into the man I thought I knew entirely, and yet didn't. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, reading every single one with trembling hands and a breaking heart. He had tried to meet me emotionally. But I was too armored to receive it. I always thought I was the emotionally mature one, the communicator, the thinker. But these letters told another truth. He had been speaking. I just hadn't been listening. I kept asking for more vulnerability, more presence, without realizing I'd already trained him to keep his softness to himself. It wasn't until he had no more time that I finally opened the box, both literally and metaphorically. And all I could think was, why do we wait until people die to finally hear them? The tragedy wasn't that Peter was gone. It was that I only just started to know him. It's been 7 weeks. The hospice bed is gone. The sympathy cards have stopped. The casseroles have dwindled. The phone calls too. But something remains. Clarity. People keep telling me I was a wonderful wife. That we had a successful marriage. I nod. Smile. Thank them. But inside I carry a different truth, one that's heavier but more honest. We lasted 41 years, but I didn't love him the way he deserved. Not fully. Not openly. Not with the kind of softness and surrender that builds intimacy, not just history. And now I'm left with echoes. I sit in our living room with a cup of tea, not to grieve but to remember better. To hold his letters. To reread the list I've made since he passed. Things I'll never withhold again. A compliment. An apology. A soft answer. A laugh. A question that leads somewhere real. I share these not as a eulogy but as a warning. Because if you're reading this and you still have time, don't make my mistakes. Don't let pride keep you from reaching across the bed. Don't let silence pretend to be peace. Don't wait for illness or loss to finally open your heart. Tell them. Tell them now. You matter. I was wrong. Come sit closer. I want to know you, still. Because in the end, Peter's last words weren't just a mirror. They were a mercy. A chance for me to change the story that comes next. I couldn't rewrite our past. But I can live differently from this moment forward. With softness. With slowness. With radical honesty. Not because I lost him. But because I finally heard him.